opponents. I don't think Missouri is nearly as good as some people believe they would be this year, but they're still at home. They're still more than a field goal favorite. I lean that Auburn gets under this number, but nothing's going to surprise me. If Missouri won the game by 21, if Auburn wins the game, none of that would surprise me.
I want to point out for emphasis, when you gave that stat a moment ago as Auburn is an underdog, you're not talking about their record against the spread. You're talking about their overall record as an underdog.
Yes. I am talking about they have been a underdog 25 times. They have won 3 of those in the last 3+ years.
3-22 is it now? As Lance said when he first pointed this stat out, the fact they've been an underdog 25 times in basically 3 years is astounding.
And what is considered a top 15, 18 program in college football all time.
That's astounding in and of itself. The record, Lance, is even more astounding to me. 3-22.
And again, going back to 2022, the second worst record in the SEC, only behind Vanderbilt. 1 game. Look, I think a lot of these problems are glaring right now for Auburn. They are dead last in the FBS and turnover margin. You can't win games if you're dead last in the FBS and turnover margin.
They have cleaned that up a little bit.
That's what I was saying. It seems to be trending down.
I mean, it was 5-5, and then it's like 1-1.
Yeah.
So it has cleaned up a little bit.
But that has not translated into wins. You've got to clean that up and somehow make it translate into wins, because the 1 turnover in the Oklahoma game cost them the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's nice if you end a game with 1 turnover, but if it's 1 turnover that's a pick 6 late in the game, that's going to be a bad turnover, right? That's almost like turning it over 3 times.
Auburn flying to Columbia midday here today out of Auburn and over to Columbia, Missouri. South Carolina, Oklahoma, 11:45 on the SEC network. Is it just because they played Alabama close last week, or just because Oklahoma's offense looks so bad that South Carolina feels like a potential good play
It's
here?
a 1.5-point game, Lance. I mean, South Carolina is only a 1.5-point dog on the road at Oklahoma. There is zero confidence in the odds makers in this Oklahoma offense, understandably.
Yeah, look, and I think Shane Beamer got kind of a win with his fans last week, just making that the game that it was.
I agree.
But on the other side, Brent Venables is not getting that. He's 20-12 at Oklahoma. He is 11-10 in conference play. That is unacceptable when you're Oklahoma's head coach. Now, I will say, coming off a loss to Texas since 1999, only 9 of those, by the way, in the last 25 years, but they're 9-0 straight up. So they have played well after coming off that loss.
I look at this. I think points are going to be tough to come by for both teams. Obviously, the total in this game is only 41.5. That's a very small college total.
Hey, that Oklahoma offense is hard to watch right now. Didn't Jackson Arnold say something this week that he's committed to the program? And
I did not see it.
It was something positive from Jackson Arnold about him committed to the program, and he's doing his best, preparing like a starter.
If he really is the future, continue to play this guy. Like Nico's struggling right now. The only way he's going to get better if he plays this. It's not a Jackson Arnold problem.
Right.
It is a offensive problem. They have yet to go over 300 yards against Power 4 yet. 300 yards is not a lot of yards in today's college football. They haven't eclipsed that.
His helmet was on the entire Red River. He's still there. He says this week he's still committed. So if he's not lying and he's really, willing to go out there and burn a year and not take a red shirt, then I would have put him in last week. It could not be worse than it was last week.
I've got a feeling this is going to be a one and done. Venables will use him as the scapegoat.
Yep.
I mean, they're 130th nationally in third down conversions. Can't convert third downs, obviously. Can't keep the offense on the field. Got to just pause real quick. Do you know that random? Oh, well, y'all will see the name now. How random is that? He's on Good Morning Football.
Oh, Gary Dieter.
Yeah,
the former Alabama receiver.
Bowling Green to Alabama receiver. I don't know why he would be on Good Morning Football.
He's talking about the Yankees for some reason.
Yeah, and he won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, right? He was on that.
I think he was on practice squad.
He was practice squad then, but I bet he got a ring.
Got a ring.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to make the point that is so random, Lance. I was going to say Jake Paul first. Is there a little Jake Paul?
That maybe a little bit. I think it's a beer. Cooper Kupp a little bit.
Maybe a little Cooper Kupp. I would have taken a long time to get to former Alabama receiver Gary Dieter.
No, I would
have gotten there.
Yeah.
That is pretty random on Good Morning Football NFL Network. South Carolina, if you look at Oklahoma's offense, Alabama is significantly better in the line, right, than Oklahoma.
Yes.
Alabama is significantly better at receiver than Oklahoma.
Yes.
All Oklahoma's receivers are hurt. Alabama is more than significantly better at quarterback than Oklahoma.
Yep.
And those edges gave Alabama fits from South Carolina. What are they going to do to Oklahoma? And I think that's why you look at this game and you're like, South Carolina's got a good shot to win this thing.
Alabama, Tennessee, 2:30 ABC. We'll talk more about that one with Furman and a lot more on ourselves a little bit later in the show. Texas A&M, Mississippi State, 3:15 SEC Network. Aggies, everyone talking about them in the playoffs. If and their young quarterback Van Buren is. Monday Morning Live with Tom Luginbill. Now live on our next round platform. Luginbill is going to join us after a long trip to the West Coast. Good morning, Tom Luginbill. How you doing, man?
Good morning, Jim Dunaway. How are you doing? Another great weekend of college football?
Yes. Remind me in the second segment, I want to tease ahead because I got to listen to you and Barrett on Sirius XM yesterday on how you are now talking that maybe the SEC isn't as good and the Big Ten maybe is better than we thought, but save it for the second half hour because we got a lot to get to. But I love the way you national guys do this every year, but that's okay. It's okay. We'll get to that. Hey, before we do Bama and Tennessee, let's go with the biggest game in the country. It was Georgia and Texas. And now Georgia is up to number 2 in the country with their one loss to Alabama. Oregon's your new number 1 team. Let's start first about the game, and then we'll get to the controversy, the call, the reversal, the trash on the field, and all that. But from the game itself, Georgia wins it 30-15. There are some big positives for Georgia. There's some questions about Texas. I want to start first with what I thought the difference in the game was, and I want to see if you agree. Georgia's offensive line, I think, finally played up to potential, and maybe that was the first time we saw that Texas's defensive line is a couple of steps down from where it was last year. I thought the trenches on that side of the ball, offense and defense, Georgia and Texas, was the key to that game. What'd you think?
Oh, it absolutely was. It was the difference in the game. I think from a Georgia perspective, it allowed them to run the football a little bit more. Not great, but more than they'd been running it leading up to that game. They had just gotten too pass happy, just a team that I don't think wants to be in that mode all the time. So I thought there was progress there. But really where I thought the difference in the football game was Georgia's defensive front against Texas. And when you put Texas in a position to be, 2 of 15 on third down, the reason why that is because the third downs were third and longs, right? The offensive line was really struggling to not only hold up and create opportunities in the run game, but to handle the pressure and really just a 4-man, sometimes 5, but mostly Georgia controlled the line of scrimmage with a 4-man front. And listen, both teams had their flaws. Both teams had turnover problems. Both teams had some penalties, not in the double digits, but enough to make an impact. And that's where the difference in my mind was Georgia settled down a little bit. But that defensive front, Texas didn't have any answers for that. And that is a really good Texas offensive line. There's at least one first-rounder on there, maybe a couple other draft choices here in the next year or two. So that's what impressed me most about Georgia.
So Georgia wins the game 30-15. Both teams are 6-1. As I said, we'll get into the playoff picture and where the SEC stands in that in Luke's mind, and I have some thoughts on that coming up in a moment. But there continues to be some turnovers coming from the quarterback position for Georgia, though they get the win pretty handily, doubling up Texas. But 3 more interceptions from Carson Beck. That was a problem in the first half in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. What's happening with Carson? Is he just taking more chances because he has to, because of just not the dominant playmakers on that side of the ball that they had last year?
That, and I think he's pressing a little bit because they haven't been able to set up their play action game through a successful early down run game as consistently as we become accustomed to seeing. As I referenced, I feel like they're throwing the football earlier and more frequently than they'd like to. And so he's taking some more chances. He probably feels like he's got to make a ton of plays because they're not getting the chunk plays in the ground game. And maybe it's just been a little risky with the football. It just seems off schedule a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. So Georgia wins. The big talking point, though, was the pass interference call, the flag there, and then trash being thrown on the field. And then after a lengthy discussion, the refs coming together saying that they had discussed it and that there was no pass interference. Now, we all know that the head official has a headset. Everybody's got a headset, but the ability of Birmingham to talk to the official, is there. And I just wonder what you think happened and how you see it, because we know how Kirby Smart sees it. He did not pull back any of his words in the post-game interview. He says He used the word rob us in this place. What'd you think of how it went?
Well, first off, I said on my show on Sunday, I said the ball's in your court, 12th man at Texas A&M. All right, this Texas crew caused a turnover. What are you capable of doing?
Yes.
I mean, they literally did. Had the fan reaction not occurred and created that length of time, then I don't think that call gets overturned. It was a terrible call to begin with. It was not pass interference, not even close to being pass interference. So that part of it was poor. They got it right eventually, but the optics and the mechanics of it are so bad. And had they not had that lull in time, I don't think they would have ever gotten there. I think they would have moved right on through the booze and went on to the next snap. But because of what transpired with the reaction and the debris coming on the field, I kind of felt like it peer pressured the officials into regrouping in a situation where they normally would not have had time to or taken the time to.
There is such nuance to pass interference calls. And when the guy threw the flag, he saw something. There was contact at the top. Some would say the offensive receiver made the contact happen. Maybe it was equal contact, no flag. But the official sees something that makes him throw the flag. Are you okay with us starting to second guess those type of judgment calls? Because I think we tried that one year in the NFL, didn't we? We could challenge pass interference calls, and it was a disaster.
It is a disaster because it's even more subjective than targeting. And we've seen how targeting has been looked at, in my opinion, very poorly across college football in relationship to the new crown of the helmet rule and all of those sorts of things. But yeah, you can't take that call. There's way too many gray area. Nuance is a great term you just used. I know that one of the big part of the mechanics in that is the extension of the arm and the extension of the elbow, all right, to a flat surface when it comes to clinching that call for an official. And in that particular instance, I didn't see anything in that. I thought I saw two players had some contact at the top of the route, but I didn't see a shove off or a push off that got somebody off balance and put them in an inability to make the play. I didn't see that, but yeah, the subjectivity of it is going to be play by play, game by game, crew by crew, and that's never going to change. That's why it can't be reviewable.
Yeah, the big takeaway was though the Horns get the quick touchdown, cut it to 8, but then Georgia's able to finish them off on the road, which was I think we saw that DNA in them when they came back in Tuscaloosa and took the lead, eventually losing the game. But that was a lot of DNA spilled on the field in Tuscaloosa, and that Georgia team showed it again with that win.
Jim, Kirby Smart had something going to this game that he hasn't had in quite some time, and this is what happens when you become a victim of a high level of success, and that is a chip on their shoulder. An underdog mentality, public sentiment that includes doubt and speculation. It's kind of when Dabo Swinney goes, "Oh, we're little old Clemson over here." Well, it's hard to play that role when you've been kicking everybody's ass all the time. Well, now all of a sudden it looks like there may be a flaw, or you're a little bit off. You're not running the football well. You lose on the road to Alabama, and it's that sky is falling mentality. And now all of a sudden he was able to manufacture an us against the world approach. And when you take that and you couple it with their athletes and their depth and their ability to take over a football game, I just thought it added a psychological element that Georgia needed, fully utilized, but hasn't had in their arsenal recently because of their level of success.
Let's get to what everyone around here is talking about, and that's Alabama and Tennessee. But first, let me remind everybody, Monday Morning Live is brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, our presenting sponsor here, promo code NEXTROUND. You go to mybookie.ag, you'll find a great app that allows you to make a play on any sporting event that is going on that you like right now, the NFL with Monday Night Football, a couple of games happening today, more baseball in the World Series is set, college football rolls back on Tuesday all week long wrong again. It's all for you right there at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Get a deposit bonus when you jump in with a promo code next round, no space, jam it together next round, and jump on and enjoy the action like you never have before with our friends at mybookie.ag. All right, Tennessee beats Alabama 24-17 in what was a sloppy game at times on both sides of the football. I want to make two statements right here because it's easy for everyone to blame coaching. And I'm not here to defend the coaching staff or support the coaching staff or anything like that. I'm just saying this. Last year with Nick Saban, the greatest of all time to do it, Alabama had major penalty problems. And they also had snap count problems. I was told many times about the snaps that weren't on target, and a lot of that had to do with Jalen Milroe's cadence and his inability to set into a good pattern for his offensive line. That all came back this past weekend. Crowd noise, snap count problems to the offensive linemen that I talked to post-game, and then the penalties. That stuff was there last year. They overcame it. They didn't overcome it again Saturday up in Knoxville. When you look at Alabama, it seems to be sloppy at times on almost every island of that football team. Your takeaway from that loss at Tennessee is what?
That Alabama is a sloppy, undisciplined football team that has the good fortune of having a collection of really, really good athletes that allows them to overcome most of what most teams couldn't so that they can be in the game at the end of the fourth quarter. That's what they are right now. Good teams don't play that way. You can have a collection of really, really good athletes, which they have, that play undisciplined, unintelligent football that looks, I don't want to say it, it looks like they, for the first time in a while, are second guessing. They're not going out with that mentality that we're the big bad dog on the block and nobody's interfering with us. I think there's a little self-doubt right now with this football team. But you can go, you can play a lot of games. If Alabama is playing that game against 70 some odd other schools, 80 some odd other schools, and plays it that way, they're still capable of winning it because of their athletes. But when you go on the road and you have noise and you've practiced through all of that stuff, you've practiced through clutter, you've practiced through silent count, you've practiced through, quick exchange and having to run a field goal team up onto the field with 7 seconds left and 110,000. Those things are all things that you prepare for. For whatever reason, this team cannot execute on a consistent level of whether it's the X's and O's side of it or the avoidance of the penalties and the lack of discipline and whether it's technique or what have you. And listen, Tennessee was every bit as guilty of, I think, that exact same analysis. At the end of the day, they just made fewer errors. And the bottom line is, if Nico Iamaleava is accurate in the first half, this is a 3-touchdown difference at halftime. So what happened for Alabama there was they were very fortunate they didn't connect, and then they were fortunate that Tennessee continued to turn the ball over, which allowed for them to stay in the football game. But at the end of the day, and you've heard me say this 100 different times, man, like the game comes down to a handful of plays, right? And oftentimes those handful of plays aren't necessarily the plays you make or the mistakes you avoid.
I got to ask you this because I went back and watched it again yesterday because I was at the game. So I'll pause there for the edit. Jalen Milroe seemed like he had a ton of open runs to run the football like he usually runs the football and didn't choose to do that. From a quarterback's mind, you played it in college. Why do you stop taking the run when it appears to be there for 5, 10, 15 yards?
Well, a couple of things that could come into play there. That could be something that they're trying to coach him to be more disciplined within his progressions before he takes off and runs, which could then lead to whether it's locking on, staying with one side of the field too long, and then you don't get through your progression. So that could be it. Another thing is maybe he's just not seeing it, because the Jalen Milroe that I'm watching right now seems to be a player that on the second half of last year, really from probably after the Arkansas game on, had become a much more functional, disciplined passer with consistent accuracy and consistent decision-making. And now I feel like he's regressed into more of a sandlot player, where it's a little bit helter-skelter out there. And I feel like whether you believe Alabama is struggling and has deficiencies in the offensive line or not, the movement outside of the pocket, sometimes unnecessarily and sometimes into the face of the rush or into the area where the pressure is coming from, is getting him into trouble. And then his eyes come down and he's not seeing what's going downfield. To your point, could also be leading to not seeing that front door right in front of him because he's worried about what's happening with the live bullets flying by. But something is just off schedule with him right now.
A coach I talked to yesterday tells me, because I was asking him, man, it felt like he was throwing behind every receiver, that they were open and not one single pass was spot on where he wanted to throw it. And the coach said, you're either one of two things or both. You're either waiting too long and not anticipating that throw, or your feet's bad. And he said he thought Jalen both was holding it and missing the time to throw the pass, and also had bad platform. Did you see that watching Jalen?
Yeah, but I think he's kind of been like that his entire career to this point. But yes, accuracy begins from the ground up. So if your feet aren't in the right place and you're off platform or you're off balance, you're not going to, not everybody's Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers or some of these guys that don't have to have everything perfect for them to put a ball into a 6-inch, diameter of the only spot it could be thrown in order for it to be caught. But I do agree, like, you take the basics and the dig routes and things of that nature, and they'll have a step of separation away from somebody. And if he puts the ball a foot in front of the numbers, it's a catch and turn and run. If you put the ball on the back shoulder, right, while the guy's crossing your face, now all of a sudden you're making him adjust, and he's adjusting towards where the coverage is coming to. And now that separation evaporates, and you have either a pass deflected, a pass batted up into the air, and clearly you have no catch. So ball placement is everything. I do think he's been streaky in that regard, but I said this to you before. The best thing he does is throw the deep ball well. That's been his history of the probably the most comfort he has. Where he has struggled consistently is in the short and intermediate game, and I don't know if I've seen a lot of improvement there.
Our friends at Gutter Cap, they bring you the show, and I got a couple more questions for Lugs on Alabama and then on what Tennessee did right to win the football game. But Gutter Cap will let you get a big win with your home, because as the leaves fall right now this time of year here in the South, it clogs up your gutters. Maybe you got some leaves left over from back when Nick Saban was winning national championships. You need to clean out of those things and get them capped. One last cleaning and then capped with Gutter Cap. You get 45% off. You get a free estimate on your house there. Best part about it with Chris Stewart, once you get them capped, never have to worry about those gutters again. 205-823-2212, 823-2212, guttercapbirmingham.com. Luke, there is something, I believe, to the fact that occasionally the name Alabama and that jersey with Nick Saban as the head coach helped Alabama. I don't know if it was worth 3 points, 5 points, 7 points, or whatever, but that seemed to help Alabama at times over the years, and that's not there anymore. Tennessee, they did rush the field, but it was a delayed walk onto the field afterwards. It was a big win for Tennessee, but it wasn't the same as it felt when I was there in 2022. Is there something to Kalen DeBoer, who's a great coach, but he's not Nick Saban? And this isn't Alabama of yesteryear rolling in. When a team doesn't have the same mystique as it had, does that give you a leg up as an opponent?
I think it does, absolutely. If you come out of the tunnel and you're going into pregame warm-up and you walk out and you're not literally intimidated by that uniform, by that brand, by that name, Nick Saban being on the sideline, what that meant, what that brought. When that's no longer there, yeah, I think it has an impact. I think it has an impact home and away. And this Alabama team is not helping to alleviate any of those doubts or those concerns with the performance on the field, because you got accustomed to this Alabama team looking superhuman. How many times have I said this to you? When you play Alabama and you have a chance of beating them, you're going to have to play your best game, and they're going to have to help you, right? And that's not what Alabama teams would do. Now, this Alabama team is helping people across the board, whether it's turnovers, whether it's penalties. They're not playing the way that we become accustomed to seeing. And I do think you lose a little bit of that intimidation factor. Doesn't mean that you can't get it back. Doesn't mean that there's not a bunch of different ways to skin a cat, which of course there are. But right now, I think that this program's a little bit in limbo of figuring out what the identity of this particular team is. Forget the last 17 years. How do they build and create and capitalize what this team is?
Your comments in the mybookie.ag chat room in just a second. Another thing I scribbled on my note card here watching the game again yesterday. Ryan Williams had 8 catches. It felt like he had 30 targets. I don't know what the final number was, but it looked to me like they were looking to connect Jalen and Ryan Williams more than they ever have at any point this year, sometimes with an NFL defensive back covering him. Did you notice more targets up for Ryan Williams, and is that a smart thing to do?
Absolutely. I would target him as long as you can have one-on-one operation and you're not forcing the ball into a double team or bracket situation where they're trying to take him away, which would force the quarterback to just, all right, let's find out who's going to be open then over here, because they can't have everybody covered one-on-one if they're going to bracket Ryan Williams. But to your earlier point about ball placement, I thought he was on the receiving end of throws that were off the mark, that even a Ryan Williams can make a spectacular play, but he didn't make it easy on Ryan Williams. And I'm not saying it has to be easy all the time. We've seen the young man make spectacular catches, but you also got to give him a chance to just make the routine catch if he's got a step of separation in that regard. And listen, I thought Greg McElroy on air was right when he stated that maybe this isn't the same caliber of a collective group of skilled weapons at Alabama that we've seen before. Jeremy Bernard, really, really good player, but it's not like you've got, Ryan Williams and then Jerry Jeudy, or Ryan Williams and Calvin Ridley, or Ryan Williams and Amari Cooper, or Jalen Waller, what have you. I think you have Ryan Williams, and then you have some good players that are good enough to win a lot of matchups and win football games if you're playing clean football. But I don't know if it's as dominant of a position group as we've seen before.
Yeah, but it's rarely going to be that dominant to have
Waddle. I mean,
yeah,
to have those guys as a collective group on one ride. I mean, and right now that's kind of what Ohio State's been experiencing for the last 3 to 4 cycles, right? And then that will eventually run out on them too.
Yeah. I mean, if you got Devontae and Waddle out there and paired up with a couple of first-rounders every time, if you've got one first-rounder, that should be enough. Those other guys are wonderful supporting cast. I just think you have to use them a little bit more. Let's jump into the mybookie.ag chat room. Cheese says, this Georgia team is a replica of the 2015 Alabama team that was beat by Ole Miss early and then went on to win it all. I'll ask you about Georgia here. For those that remember that season, I think that was a little question at quarterback, but eventually Jake Coker took over the Alabama team, and they leaned into a running attack, and they went on to win the national championship. It did feel like Georgia had a different identity in the first half against Alabama. They found it in the second half, and they've been doing that ever since. Not always. It hasn't always looked pretty. The Auburn game was still a little sluggish. But do you think Georgia has the type team to run the table and win the national championship?
Oh, I absolutely believe that they're capable of doing that with that roster profile. Now, in comparison to that 2015 team, I think that Georgia has probably a better player under center, but counter to that may not be a team that just lines up and says, hey, we're going to run it down your throat, and this is what we're going to do, and you're going to like it, and it doesn't matter how or when, but it's going to happen. I don't know if we've seen that type of mentality from Georgia in the run game with this particular team as that 2015 Alabama team had.
Yeah. I do want to, people are questioning play calling, and the one they keep going back to was the throw to Ryan Williams and where Jamar McCoy made the interception. They come back to that play later on, different guy covering Ryan Williams and scored the first touchdown. And this is back to the Bama-Tennessee game. When you're a quarterback in that position, Lugs, I think Greg explained this on the broadcast very well, that almost is an option for the quarterback. He has a run to one side, or if he likes the coverage, he makes that call and throws it out to Ryan Williams. That's the way McElroy explained it on the broadcast. What was the difference in the first one that was an interception and the second was a touchdown? Just the throw, or was it the coverage?
I think it was probably more the throw than the coverage. Greg's right. Basically, it's two plays built into one, and you have to get a look to take you away from the run that you like and then the matchup that you like, and then you have to make the proper throw. Okay, so I think it's more of an accuracy thing than anything else. The look had to take him there. I don't know exactly what the mechanics were on that particular play in terms of what he's being taught, but I know there has to be a clear, definitive trait where you say, okay, if you get this, all right, you can go away from that and take it. If you don't, you got to stick to this over here. But accuracy, to me, you got to give your guy a chance, man.
Hog Wild Fishing says Milrose a fine quarterback. The last pick was just a bad decision and a little bad placement. You got to keep riding with 4. A lot of people were, as Alabama and college football fans tend to do, backup quarterbacks always a favorite talking point. Milroe is the leader of this team. But at some point in a game, if you see a quarterback is off, are you a proponent of setting him for a series to maybe catch his breath, or no? You like to leave the quarterback in the entire time and let him work through it?
Well, it's a great question. I think, when you look at how the Georgia-Texas game transpired, I didn't think that was good timing for Sark. I was really surprised he did it. I'm glad he kind of got back on the horse and said, okay, we got to ride this guy. Let's get him back in there. And then he started to play pretty good. I think it has to be really, really bad. I think it has to be they got to be catastrophic errors resulting in points more than one time in a span of a small period of time for you to get to the point mentally where you say, all right, this thing's going to really get away from us. We better try something else here. The problem is you have to be so convinced that the something else is going to actually fix the problem. And that's not easy to do because there's a reason why one guy's on the field and the other guy's not. And when things aren't going well, just as with the head coach, the quarterback's going to take far more of the blame that he deserves. And when things are going well, he's going to get a lot more credit. And that's just the nature of the position. And I know fans want to be hard on a guy. And I think that everybody's frustrated from an Alabama fan perspective. And nobody's more frustrated than the players and the coaches. All right. This isn't how they want to go out on a Saturday night and play their game with their level of athletes. This is what they're going through right now. They got to find a way to get out of it.
30 minutes mostly on Alabama's loss to Tennessee. We'll get to Auburn's loss coming up, Luginbill on the playoffs, and all the other big games going on in the country. Don't forget the show brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag, promo code next round, and also by Who Is Coffee. We got another shipment of our coffee in on Friday for another half a month of coffee drinking in the Dunaway home, curated by Scott Forester, all the beans from around the country into the perfect next round blend. You can get next round coffee and other great coffees right there. Who Is Coffee, just an easy way. Nextround.store, nextround.store. Order there, pick up some great gear for the holidays while you're there as well. This is Monday Morning Live. He's ESPN's Tom Luginbill. We got 30 more minutes after a quick timeout right here on TNR.
Call the at 205-734-0923.
Man, I love a good meal. I'm Jim Dunaway. A good meal is what you get with my friend Sterling at Champy's Chicken on Highway 119 in Alabaster. We're talking great southern fried chicken, wonderful sides, hand-cut chicken fingers, po' boys, and those Mississippi Delta recipe tamales. You got a perfect menu for everybody. Champy's Chicken is perfect for watching the big game or taking a meal to the lake house, down to the coast, or stay in the restaurant and dine in a great atmosphere. It's all made fresh to order right there on 119 in Alabaster, Champy's Chicken.
Hey, you feel that? that's fall in the air. And New Balance Birmingham got your fresh fall pair to kick it during game time and sport from the sideline. Come together at New Balance Birmingham on Highway 280 right next to Chick-fil-A. New Balance Birmingham, we got now.
Happy football season. At the next round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to Fall Saturdays.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
This hour of The Next Round is presented by the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, now featuring 7 days of giveaways with your chance to win a share of up to $125,000. The more you visit the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, the more chances you have to win.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
In some places, football is a sport. In Alabama, it's a fine art. New Life Art is proud to announce Daniel A. Moore's upcoming painting, Deuces Wild. This season, Bama is blessed with a pair of very talented deuces. The pair played a huge role on both sides of the ball in the Tide's amazing 41-34 victory over number 2 Georgia. Deuces Wild will portray the unbelievable game-winning 75-yard touchdown catch by deuce number 1, Ryan Williams, late in the fourth quarter. The Dogs' last chance drive was stopped by deuce number 2, Xavier Brown, as he made the game-saving interception in the end zone, which will be celebrated by a small artist's remark in the bottom margin of each print. Go to danielmooreart.com to see the artist's preliminary sketch and take advantage of special pre-publication pricing for Deuces Wild. Also available, The Legend, Daniel Moore's final tribute to Coach Nick Saban. Order now at danielmooreart.com.
Hey, this is Matt Roth, the franchisee of Walk On Sports Bistro in Birmingham. With the kickoff of football season, come visit us at one of our 3 locations, Stadium Trace, Greystone, or Trussville. Come enjoy our scratch kitchen menu while watching one of our 80 TVs. Whether you're looking for a pre- or post-game celebration, game day, or date night, we've got you covered. It's all about the win at Walk On Sports Bistro. Walk On, where everybody needs a little playing time.
Start your day online with our website, nextroundlive.com, for the latest videos, podcasts, and college football stories. It's also a great way to stream the show or shop in the Next Round store. Stay connected by visiting nextroundlive.com.
Hey, this is Tom Luginbill's Monday Morning Live as we continue on until the top of the hour. Middle eights next with Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown. Then the next round rolls with you at 9 Central Time here on the platform. New AP poll out yesterday. Oregon with 59 of 61 first-place votes. They're your new number 1 team in the country. Georgia with 2 first-place votes is up to number 2. Then Penn State, Ohio State, Texas drops to 5. Miami, Tennessee up to 7. LSU, Clemson, Iowa State rounding out your top 10. Texas A&M is 14. Alabama drops to 15. Ole Miss is 18. Missouri is 21. Vandy is in at 25. More on Vandy's game with Texas in just a little bit. In the chat room, Lugs, they're continuing to talk about the Alabama-Tennessee game. Robert continues to try to make your point while others are saying Alabama's defense played good enough to win the game. Robert keeps going back to very lucky. Should have been 21-0 in the first half if Nico had been more on target. What'd you make of the defense? The scoreboard and such tells me it was a better performance, but there were chances in the second half to lock that down and not allow them to take the lead back, and it didn't happen. But I did think the defense played a little better.
No, I thought the defense played better, but then Dylan Sampson really started getting cooking, right? And I think he's the best back in the league. He is, when he gets rolling, and that's when they're at their best, because that keeps them ahead of the chains, and then it forces people to add another hat in the box, and then that's what leads to the one-on-one opportunities downfield, of which on Saturday Tennessee missed in the first half, did not miss in the second half. And so, I just think this Alabama defense is better when they are pressuring. I think they're better when they're creating havoc, when they're turning guys loose. Now, in doing so, you're taking a young secondary at times, and you're going to put them on an island, and you're going to put them in a position where they're going to be vulnerable. So you're taking your chances, and you're taking some risks there. But I think they're a better defensive unit with that approach, as opposed to just sitting back, rushing 3 or 4, and allowing people to carve them apart.
Luginbill's thoughts on the playoff race in a second. Al W., not the last game Bama loses this year. Meltdown continues. Maverick Hammerfist, I'm okay with the loss. It happens. I don't like the penalties. I don't like the undisciplined play. JB, I'd rather lose with someone young than lose with Jalen Milroe the rest of the year. We'll see what happens at quarterback. I personally don't think anything will change, and Milroe's your best chance of winning football games, but you can fan all you want to fan. We'll see what happens down the stretch. Now to everything else going on in the nation. You had Indiana survive Nebraska, Iowa State survived Central Florida, BYU survived Oklahoma State, and Miami survived Louisville. Those 4 teams, their journeys continue. They were close, hard-fought games, except for Indiana and Nebraska.
Not Indiana and Nebraska. I was going to step up and say, wait a minute.
That was a woodshed beating there. Turnovers from Raiola. Indiana took it to Nebraska there. I didn't see that one coming. How legit is Coach Cignetti's team, in your opinion? Is that their most impressive win to date?
Well, I think he inherited a pretty good core nucleus. And then what Curt Cignetti did, I thought, was masterful in the sense that when they went out and targeted a quarterback, and I happened to broadcast 3 of Curtis Rourke's games during my midweek Maction assignments over the last 2 to 3 years, they got one of the most productive players. Now, a lot of people knew about him, but one of the most productive players in college football over the last 3 years. And he wanted a guy that had played, been productive, and been successful. And that's exactly what he got. And now he hurts his thumb. He's out at least this week versus Washington. But Taven Jackson, the young guy, comes in and goes 7 for 8 and throws 2 touchdowns. And they're really excited about the future for him. So I think this is a really good football team that's had a very good schedule. The quarterback play has been outstanding. What will it be without Curtis Rourke if they have to play with him for a sustained period of time? But I wasn't surprised in the sense that this game was on the road, and when you got an experienced quarterback with an undefeated team versus a team in the making with a true freshman quarterback, generally the true freshman quarterback is going to be the team that makes the errors.
All right, as we get ready for another big week of football in the state and in the SEC and in the nation, for Auburn fans, they're 2-5 now after another loss this weekend. They controlled this game, Luke, 17-6.
Yeah.
And then in the final few minutes of the game, the fourth quarter, the quarterback, Brady Cook, comes back from the hospital. Then he does a workout in the indoor facility, and they test the ankle, and then he comes back and he leads them to 2 scoring drives to win the football game for Missouri. First of all, start with Brady Cook and just the effort to not sit this one out and wait until fight another day, to do the hospital trip and then work his way back into the game and lead them to victory.
Well, it tells you everything he's made of. I can tell you that. And it could have easily sat in the hospital bed and watched it on TV. Could have easily come back and decided to put the crutches under his shoulders and watch from the sideline, and it just wasn't going to happen. And the moment it looked like his mobility was fine, you kind of got the sense that, okay, now all of a sudden they got their ringleader back. This could get interesting down the stretch. But I think the thing that stands out to me the most about this, Jim, and because I watched that game in its entirety, is for whatever reason, Auburn has an inability to handle prosperity and capitalize on momentum. When something good happens to them, they can't carry it over. When momentum comes over to their sideline, they can't maintain it. It's like this elusive cloud of smoke that they're constantly grasping at, and they can't maintain possession of it, and it's killing them. Because the moment something doesn't go their way, it's the, oh, here we go again mentality. Instead of being able to take that positive, take that 17-6 lead, and put your foot on the pedal, press it to the floor, and finish it. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a mentality, if it's a lack of leadership, if it's energy on the sideline, whatever it is. But that is really problematic. If I'm Hugh Freeze, I'm an Auburn fan, I'm looking at this, that's problematic. You can't handle good things happening to you and then turning them into great things.
With 4 minutes and change left, 4:26, I think, 17 plays, 95 yards for basically the game-winning touchdown when they score with under a minute to play. 17 plays, 95 yards. That included a third down run by the guy who just came back from the hospital, a fourth down pass to Burden, and another 3rd and 10 completion on the way. That's a drive for the ages if you're a Missouri fan, but for Auburn and DJ Durkin, man, that's a tough one to swallow.
It is, because I actually thought they played pretty good on that side of the ball most of the day. I thought they were the more physical team at the point of attack, and I loved Auburn's linebacker play. I thought the linebacker play at Auburn was relentless, and it was physical. That throw on the fourth down that you referenced to Burden, that throw was put in the only – we're talking about accuracy with Jalen Milroe. That ball Brady Cook threw had one spot to fall into for that ball to be caught, and it's exactly – where he threw it. It was a terrific display of accuracy. But, yeah, you've got to be tremendously disappointed on the defensive side because you outplayed the other team. You knocked out the quarterback. You made a backup quarterback look like a backup quarterback. And, again, you're carrying the momentum into the fourth quarter, and you cannot capitalize on it. Whatever reason, it's so elusive for them to maintain possession of it.
Our show brought to you in part by our friends at Roback.com. Roback.com, promo code TNR20 gets you 20% off. TNR20 gets you 20% off with our friends at Roback. Great hoodies and great golf pants and other great items this time of year. Perfect for the gift under the tree. Roback.com, TNR20, 20% off your order right there. Here's your Roback stat. Auburn now, they've lost their first 4 games in the SEC for the second consecutive year. They're off to a 0-4 in the SEC start last year to this year. It doesn't get too much easier now on the road at Kentucky for this Auburn team. You've coached football before. How do you put these final 5 games into a capsule and coach up your guys? Are you fighting for bowl eligibility? You're taking it one game at a time. You're playing for the future. How do you motivate this Auburn team down the stretch going to Lexington?
I think you got to challenge the personal pride of every player in that locker room to make a decision on whether or not they want to turn this thing around and get on a run and have a true care for one another as a team, which I think is harder in this day and age to do than it's ever been in the history of college football because of the transfer portal, because of name, image, and likeness. There are a lot of things that can fracture a team. And when things aren't going well, who are your galvanizing forces? And I think that will tell you a lot about who steps up and is the Pied Piper for Auburn that's going to lead the charge, because you can coach and you can motivate and you can prepare and you can game plan and you can put everybody in the right position. But then ultimately the players have to make a collective decision of who they are, what they want to be, and how they are going to perform, because there's not a coach in America that's got any eligibility left on a Saturday afternoon. But it's hard right now because the natural thought process from outsiders, right, and maybe to some degree from insiders, is how do you not lose the team? Like, in my opinion, that's where I think Billy Napier right now deserves a ton of credit as a football coach. he has not lost that team. That team is fighting and continuing to play and looked really good on Saturday. Took Tennessee to the wire on the road the week before. So somehow, whatever he's doing, pushing the buttons to keep that team playing, he's doing a really good job. Auburn's got to come up with trying to find a way to do the same thing.
Tom Luginbill of ESPN. He also does SiriusXM with Barrett Sallee on the weekends. MyBookie.ag brings you Monday Morning Live. He always gives us his take to get your Monday started off right, not only on our video platforms, but also on our audio apps as well, and also podcasted after on the Apple and Spotify podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, download, and give us a rating there. We appreciate it. All right, Luke, yesterday with you and Sallee there, you got into a discussion about, maybe the SEC isn't as good as we thought they might be going in, or maybe as we thought they were earlier this year when we were discussing possibly 5 SEC teams in the playoffs. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just explain to me what you were talking about there as I was on my way to the golf course and then catching it again when I was on my drive home from the golf course because it runs all day long, and I love that. But there are at some point strength of schedule in the teams that the SEC are playing and losing to has to factor in a bit, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think really what I was getting at more of is the competitive balance top to bottom is good, but maybe what we thought coming into the season in terms of having sheer dominance from, let's just say, an Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, even LSU, Texas perspective coming in, where you really just thought all of those teams were head and shoulders, like there was a clear line. And I just don't know, as we've seen the first 7-8 weeks of the season unfold, if that line's not a little bit more blurry. Like, for example, would I have Vanderbilt ranked over SMU right now? I don't know. But I understand why Vanderbilt is ranked right there. Would I have Missouri ranked over, let's just say, SMU or Pitt right now? I don't know. But I understand the conference affiliation, and I think the top to bottom competitiveness and the fact that Vandy's improved, Florida's competing, Kentucky's hit or miss, South Carolina, I think, has exceeded expectations. But have they exceeded expectations because maybe Alabama's not as good, or at least not playing as good? And then you look at, obviously Georgia having the game they had versus Kentucky, the first half they had against Alabama, although they played their tail off in the second half, and now they go on the road and they get a big win versus Texas. I just think what's happened is yes, they're all good teams. I just don't know if there's as many dominant as we thought going into the season.
And I don't disagree with you. In fact, I understand rankings and what you're saying there. For me, Vanderbilt is helped out because of the win over Alabama. And I know the name is one thing, but Alabama did beat Georgia, so that does add a little to the strength of schedule and resume. With Alabama's win over Georgia, that means Vandy beat a team that beat Georgia, and I know that sounds cluttered, but that's the way the world works. Indiana is unbeaten, and they're going to make the playoffs if they go unbeaten. They're probably going to make it if they go one loss. But are you going to sit here and tell me? Where do you put Indiana stacking them up against SEC teams right now? Like where? Would Indiana be above Alabama in your opinion?
The way they've been playing, probably.
If they played each other, if they played each other, Indiana would beat Alabama. You think?
If Alabama keeps playing sloppy, I think there's no question that's a possibility. Now, if Alabama went out with their collection of athletes, like I said in our first half hour, and played clean football, then no, I do not believe that. But that's not what we're seeing from Alabama. Alabama is not a clean football team right now. They're a team with really, really good athletes that are capable of blowing a game wide open. But I don't care if you're at home or on the road and you have 15 penalties, or you're, 4 of 15 on third down, and you're not running the ball overly well, struggling at pass protection at times. It looks undisciplined. I think that eventually catches up with you. And to be honest with you, sometimes, is the talent equitable between Indiana and Alabama? No, of course it's not top to bottom. But playing smart, good football, not beating yourselves, really good quarterback play, I think it puts every team into the game, even if they're matched up against somebody that they shouldn't. And you know what? The reality is maybe this is what we're going to see from Alabama every week. Maybe this is the type of team that they are. It's going to be hit, miss, highs, lows, head scratchers, penalties. You're going to have a turnover, and then you're going to have some spectacular plays. This might just be who they are this year.
Yeah, felt like that's who they were last year as well. All right, Luke's a handful of really big games again this weekend. Let's start with the biggest one in the SEC. If you're not paying attention to the standings, they're not the highest ranked teams, but LSU and Texas A&M are the only two unbeaten teams in conference play, and they play each other this week down in College Station, monumental SEC game. And that's why the league's so deep, Luke. It's not Texas, it's not Georgia. It's LSU and Texas A&M with one of the biggest, if not the biggest game in the country this weekend.
Yeah, and Texas A&M's got the schedule right in front of them, right? I mean, that's the thing that stands out to me is obviously you've got LSU here, you've got Texas at the end. I didn't think Texas A&M they didn't play as well at quarterback last week as they had the week before, but I still think they're playing good football and they have momentum on their side. I think they can see down the stretch that, holy smokes, we can be in this thing. And LSU's probably feeling the same way. While I don't think LSU's where they want to be quite yet on defense, they're an entirely different team than they were in the first 3 weeks of the season. And the quarterback continues to make plays. I just think Garrett Nussmeier is just a gamer, man. And so those two teams, while we've been talking about Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, those two teams are sitting over there, and they're probably going, you know what, let's just let everybody talk about all of those guys. We're just going to do our thing over here and see if we can find our way to sneak in.
Could Vandy have something for Texas this week in Nashville? I mean, it's got to be a letdown for Texas off that big game. Now they're on the road in sleepy Nashville.
Yeah, I would hope not, because I think that would tell you an awful lot about what the Georgia game did to the University of Texas. If Texas doesn't show up or falls flat, or kind of it turns it into a slugfest to get into the fourth quarter and then eventually pulls away. I don't think that's what Sark wants to see. You're playing a team in Vanderbilt that has a belief right now. And sometimes that's enough. I'm not saying that they're in a position to where they can, hammer Texas. But I think their belief and the fact that they play good football, they don't beat themselves, they're stout in the offensive and defensive front, they know exactly what their identity is on offense. It puts them firmly in the contest. And they're a team that you can't let linger. I think Texas needs to bounce back in this one and get off to a huge, fast start. I don't think it's going to help them because 2 weeks in a row now, Texas has not gotten off to a good start in the first quarter.
Alabama's a 2-touchdown favorite against Missouri as Missouri comes to town with a little bit of a banged-up Brady Cook. Obviously, he will not be 100% with his mobility there. How does Bama bounce back?
Eliminate mistakes. I don't think this game is about the opponent. I mean, it rarely is, but you can sit there and talk all you want about, well, we got to be careful of Luther Burden, or we got to be careful with Brady Cook and his ability to run and throw, and we got to handle the front edges of Missouri that can really get after you. To me, this is about Alabama and cleaning things up, because Missouri can't beat Alabama if Alabama doesn't beat themselves. They're not it's not the same roster profile. And so this week's got to be all about Alabama's attention to detail. Forget Missouri. You got to worry about yourself, get that right, and then the play on the field will take care of itself because you'll have superior athletes and football players to the opposition.
More likely to happen this weekend, Illinois upsetting Oregon out in Eugene, or Navy beating Notre Dame in East Rutherford?
Navy beating Notre Dame in East Rutherford. The great neutralizer of all of the things that team is doing offensively that are so difficult to prepare for would scare the daylights out of me if I'm Marcus Freeman and I'm Mike Denbrock and the rest of that Notre Dame staff. Notre Dame is quietly becoming one of the best boring teams. My man Barrett Solis said that yesterday on the radio. One of the best boring teams in college football, and he's probably not wrong. but I don't think anybody wants to play the service academies right now. And by the way, Notre Dame has to play both Navy and Army. So I think the better shot would be Navy.
Game to watch, Penn State at Wisconsin. Give me 30 seconds. Can the Nittany Lions survive Madison? Alabama did earlier this year.
Alabama did. Madison is a tough place to play. Wisconsin has gotten better behind Braden Locke, which I think has surprised people a little bit, to lose your quarterback against Alabama and then actually start to improve as a football team. I think Penn State has too much offensively to handle with Andy Kotelnicki's scheme, the multitude of running backs, the targets across the field, and the fact that Drew Aller has developed a bit more of the ability to push the ball downfield. I would guard against turnovers, though. In that environment, they got away with 3 from Drew Aller against SC, still won the game. I would be very cautious that could happen against Wisconsin.
Luke's always a wealth of information, and enjoy my Monday mornings with you so much. I know our viewers and listeners do too. Thank you so much. That's mybookie.ag. Promo code next round. Monday morning live. The middle 8 is up next.